Hello, hello. It is, what is it? It is Tuesday, January 8th, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Happy New Year. It's 2019. I can't believe it. Can you? So we have, as you know, switched up from Template Tuesday after we got through I don't know, a bunch of different demos of the new Pages system and bored ourselves to death going over the same thing over and over. And so we've now transitioned to Training Tuesday, and we're kind of just going over some different topics that that seem worth doing a video about, and we're plopping them into the units section on Facebook, which let's see if I can show you what that looks like. Ontraport user community. It's right here, this thing called units. And yeah, these Template Tuesdays, we should probably put the titles of these, like what we're actually talking about in here. Can we do that? Let's do that. Training Tuesdays, January 8th. And that's today. What's in here? Let's find out. Yeah, New Year's here, Training Tuesday's back. It's almost Training Tuesday. Okay, yes, this is how it's going to work. We will see if we can't update the title on those so they're a little more descriptive. That would be cool. But yeah, there's a ton of good information in here. These are all the Template Tuesdays. You can go through here and look at all the different ways to use Ontraport pages. Lots of detail in there, super cool. And then we started talking about some other stuff. I think last time we went over collections, and that was interesting. And there's a lot to learn about collections and how to display your data in Ontraport. And today I want to go over another part of the system that is probably not used as much as it could be, but it's super powerful, and that is users and permissions. Of course, Ontraport account can have many users. We have accounts with hundreds, maybe even thousands of users, and you know, of course, it makes sense that it's not in every case that you want every user of your system to be able to access you know, all parts of your data, to be able to access all the tools in Ontraport, because shoot, Ontraport is running your entire business, and you know, you got some sensitive data in there. Certainly, your list is sensitive and valuable. The data in the list may be stuff you don't want to share with everybody, and of course, the tools themselves. You know, allowing an inexperienced user, or God forbid, a user with a grudge that's actually trying to do damage, it would be really easy to mess your business up by, you know, messing with a campaign, deleting contacts. You know, we of course have backups, and so we can always recover your accounts if somebody does something bad. But you know, just even making a mistake, you know, making a mistake with a campaign, adding tags can you know, definitely do some damage to an account if you've got tags you know, that are triggering stuff in various campaigns. You may not want individual users to be able to edit certain parts of contact records, or be able to see certain parts of contact records. And all of this is manageable using the permission system that's built into Ontraport. And in fact, there's more to it than just that. So I'm going to go through what's available here and how it all works, and I'm sure that you will be able to then kind of translate that into your own business uses and see how you can put this to work for yourself. So it all starts in the administration section of your account. Actually, you know what? So here's user management. So let's see. There's a few different things that you find here in user management. The first is the users themselves. Then we got team roles and permissions, and then user field editor and lead routing. So in users, this is where you see the actual users in your account, and you can add a new user to your account by clicking this this button. And of course, it'll create a record like this, and you just fill out the required fields. There's a few of them that are required here. I think their email address is required. And let's see, I think their password is, I think we actually generate that for them. But a role is required, and a manager is required, and a language is required, I believe, and the time zone obviously not required, but a good idea to have one. And then you submit that, and of course, the user will then get an email inviting them to your Ontraport account. They log in and will then have access. And the way that permissions work is that it's largely, at least by default, based on the role that a user has. And we're actually going to make an update to the system in the coming weeks, where we kind of are going to create a bunch of default roles for you, and you know, with permissions that sort of make sense to us about the kind of permissions that each role should have. You know, a sales user, a support user, a bookkeeping user. In fact, these are the roles I kind of so support, sales, marketing, billing, bookkeeping, I think, are the roles that we're going to create. And then, you know, you'll be able to use those. Of course, you'll be able to update them as well. So if we go back here and to team roles and permission management, what you'll see here is that you have this button called role chart, and this is like an org chart basically for your business. Of course, as the first person who signed up for the Ontraport account, if that's you, you are the administrator of the account. And in Ontraport, there can only be one true administrator. Now you can have other user roles that have 100% permissions and can do anything they want to do, but the administrator is a little bit special because you can't sort of take away your own permissions. Administrator always has all the permissions, and you're not going to be able to hide stuff from yourself. So if you want to hide stuff from anybody else, then you would do that with this permissioning system. So you'll notice that there's a hierarchy here, and the reason for that, well, I'll get into the reason for that in a minute, but what that is basically is that roles have sort of, you know, somebody that they report to. Each role kind of rolls up to the next role up, and there's a reason for that. But here we have, you know, you might have, watch how we do this. We'll create a new role, and the role might be sales rep, and the role manager would be a role that this role in your company reports to. So this sales, you know, this might be renamed sales manager, for example. And so sales reps would report to sales managers. And the reason that we have reporting set, you know, who reports to who set up in the roles is there's a couple of reasons. One is that what we'll see in a minute is the permissioning system. There's ways that you can show stuff to, you know, a particular role or a particular role and the people who report to them. So down, you know, down the org chart tree. And there's also a way of in the task system making sure that, you know, if a task isn't done on time, that their manager gets notified that, you know, a task is incomplete. And so we need to kind of know who the managers are and stuff like that. So this is how this works. You just, every role has to have a role manager, and the top level, you know, roles will all report to the administrator by default, but you can kind of set it up however you like. And then what you have here is a whole bunch of check boxes. These are all permissions, and they're kind of organized. Ooh, what's this? Yeah, so let's see. Let me see this even, projects. This is, oh, this is a, I see, this is a custom object down here that I've created in this test account. So what we got here at the top is the dashboard. So can they see the dashboard? Is it on or off? Yes. Can they edit the elements in the dashboard? Yes or no. If you check it, it says yes. So you just go through here and can, you know, check everything that you want this role to be able to do. Can they manage tags? Can they create and edit context? Can they delete context? Now, notice many of these are yes and no questions, but some of these are drop downs. And so, for example, can you view context? So a sales rep, we're talking about a sales rep right now, right? Well, what do we want a sales rep to be able to see? Do we want them to be able to see all context in the account? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it would make more sense to be able to just see the contacts that are assigned to them only, right? So owned by this user, owned by me, in this case would be the sales rep, owned by me and my subordinates. So that would be, they can see, their contacts that are assigned to them and the contacts that are assigned to anybody that report to them. So for example, if you have a sales manager and you have each sales manager has 5 people that report to them, sales reps that report to them. If you set the sales manager to have this setting, can view contacts that are owned by me and my subordinates, that sales manager will be able to see any of the contacts that are assigned to them for which they're the owner, and also the 5 sales reps that report to them, they'll be able to see those as well, but not the support reps contacts that are that report to their peer. Here we have owned by me and my role, so I can see any contacts that are owned by me or anybody else that are in my role. So for example, support managers, and or I can see all contacts. And the same thing goes here. Maybe you want people to be able to see all the contacts, but not edit or delete contacts that are not owned by them or something like that. You can kind of set this up however you want. And then on the way down here, can you create and delete notes? Can you view notes? Can you see the task manager at all? Can you mark them complete? Can you reassign? Can you reschedule? Can you cancel? A lot of detail here. Administrator tools, can you get into the various administrator tools here? Can you go to web pages? Can you go to WordPress, manage WordPress setup, the partner system, sales? Can you see any of that stuff? Can you see the reports, whatever it is? Can you upload videos? Can you manage the file box? Ontraport projects should probably go because we have removed that from the system. Let's make sure we get that out of there, guys. Security. Can you add a security settings? We have, of course, a system where we manage access to your Ontraport account by IP address, and you want to be able to turn that off by default for most users. You don't want to be able to unlock their own security settings. And then you got your custom objects. So how can you see and can you deal with all the various custom objects? Now, that's going to give you kind of like high-level default role-based permissions for each individual role. And so when you set these up, you create a new user, you assign them to a role, and they're going to, by default, have the permissions that are created for that particular role. So that's going to be a useful, easy way to think about how to get started with this stuff. However, it gets more sophisticated than that, because we had lots of users who, for example, at Ontraport, we may have a bunch of users that are support reps, and support reps have a certain level of access, and we may want to give a particular support rep additional access, because say we have, maybe we don't want our support reps, looking at or messing with all of your billing. We don't, at Ontraport we don't, right? We have a billing user that, in our operations team in accounting that manages billing stuff. So our support reps don't have access to your billing information, at Ontraport. However, what if we wanted to give, say a support rep, particular access so they could at least maybe view the billing stuff and answer some questions, if not change it? Well, we would have to create a new role and then assign that person to a new role, and that's the way it used to work, actually. but it got a little unwieldy. We ended up with a whole bunch of roles, and then we'd forget that people are in the wrong roles, and kind of all sorts of stuff like that. So instead, what we did is we created a system called user permission exceptions. So these here override the default role permissions for this particular user. So if you have a particular user in a particular role, you can go in here and select a permission exception. So you can go through and look at any one of these permissions, can view companies, and then and set what the value is going to be for this particular user, and then you can add an exception. So this particular person now can see this. I don't know why that permission is missing that right there. That's kind of odd. But this guy is, oh, you can go see the permission. I think there's no, that's weird. There should be the name of the permission there. So we'll make sure that's working right. But yeah, you'll have this default permission will now be overridden for this particular user, and they'll have access then to whatever, or not access to whatever it is you set here for this particular user. So remember that is a feature that's available. Also, if you start using it, remember that you have set these things for particular users. You may want to take away permission exceptions or change them over time. So remember that is something that happens there. Okay, it gets more detailed than that, because sometimes you want to be able to allow users to say, view all the contacts in your account, but not view all the data about each contact. So for example, I may want my support reps or whoever to be able to see the contact information, but not be able to see lead information or purchase history or some kind of information that is more private than they need to see, or whatever it might be. Or maybe I don't want them to see the contact information. If I'm worried about somebody stealing my list or something, I don't want them to see the contact information perhaps. So we can manage that as well. And the way we do that is actually in the field editor. So we go to the field editor and you open this puppy up, and what you'll see here is permissions on these sections that they're some of them related deals. If they can't see deals, then they won't be able to see the sub-collection here. So some of these don't have permissions here because they're managed in another way. But in this case, you can click on permissions, and this is managed on a per section basis. So we call this a section. These are tabs over here is what we call these. And this is a section, another section, another section, another section. So this is on a per section basis. You can manage who can see what. And so if you click on permissions, you'll see all your roles here. And then just basically a bunch of checkboxes. And you can say, like, can the administrator view this section? And can they edit this section? And so you can just uncheck anything that you don't want particular roles to be able to see. And that's really valuable, not just to sort of protect your data and your company from either mistakes or malicious actors in your business, but also just to clean up the contact records. A lot of times there are roles in your business where they just don't need to see, all this stuff about every record, and kind of focusing them in on the information that's most important to them in their job duties is a kind of thing to do, so they don't have to wade through all this data all the time. So you can just go through here and not allow the billing person or the marketing person or whatever to see stuff that isn't important to them, and when they come in here, then they won't be able to see those records, which is can be really useful. So now we've got the access to the tools and the access and visibility of individual sections. Of course, if you want, for example, let me just go back to that real quick. Say I wanted to not allow access to the email. Well, we don't have per field permissions because that felt like it was going to be just too complicated and detailed. So if you don't want to, say you want to give them access to all this, but not to their email, all you do is just move this out of the section, move this into another section down here or wherever you want to move it, and then hide this other section from that user. So it's again on a per section basis. So last thing I want to mention about how the system works is, and this isn't about permissions exactly, but I do want to show you about tasks. If I go in here and create a new task, say it's a task that says you got a new lead, and I need you to call this person up, and so here it is, new lead, please call first name, last name, and it's due in 1 day, and you can assign this sucker to a particular role, and this will, when it's assigned, it'll round robin route it through the various roles. Of course, this is just through the users that have that role. So if this is a role for a sales rep, then that'll be who the owner is. Now, notifications. If I go down here to notifications, well, I want to notify the task owner that when the task is assigned by whatever, email, SMS. Of course, it'll automatically be added to their list of tasks, but if you want to notify them in some other way, you can do that. But you can also add secondary notifications, and you can, actually this should be the task assignee, not the contact owner. And here, you can also notify the task assignee's manager. You can do that, say, 1 day after the task is due. So that it's due on 1 day, the very next day, you might notify the task manager with an email, and it'll say, hey, this particular task is, was assigned to your rep, and it is, due 1 day ago. And in that way, you can give some oversight to these tasks, so that your manager can always be, aware. Of course, your manager should probably be looking at the task collection, making sure that their reps are doing their jobs. But this is a valuable way of also, kind of backing up that process. And that role system and the hierarchy of roles is what allows us to do this. So whoever the user is, the system will know who their manager is, and it'll assign them to the manager appropriately. So I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's about the size of it for roles and permissions. Pretty robust and flexible system, allows you to do a lot, hide a lot from a lot of tools, a lot of data from your users who may not need access to that. May allow you to feel confident about letting some third-party VA get into your account. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. One of the things that you may just want to disable for all users is the ability to export lists. Your list is super valuable in your business. You may not want, if you hire some, consultant or a VA or something like that, you may not want them to be able to just select all and export your list and put it in their pocket. So it would be, maybe wise to disable the ability to export lists, and that's something that's available easily in these systems. It's also a good reason not to share your login, right? Because if you share your login as an administrator, you're basically giving them access to everything. Okay, so that is how permissions work in Ontraport. If you have any questions about that, feel free to post them here in the thread, ask them in the users group. Thanks for joining us, and Happy New Year.